Hey, what's up, everyone? I am your host, Sethi.
I am stylist Rashi Bindra.
Elevated Grapes is a digital media hub that includes a talk show, event correspondence, and digital hosting for partner projects.
The talk show which you are listening to or watching, depending what you're doing, covers topics in fashion, business, and lifestyle.
We regularly have incredible guests that share their stories, their experiences, and tips on the above topics.
And when we don't, you get to hear how we talk to each other off air.
So subscribe to your favorite streaming site, YouTube, and Instagram for behind the scenes and additional visual content.
Let's jump right into the show. Welcome to Elevated Grapes.
This is the Elevated Grapes Podcast.
Elevated Grapes Podcast.
With your host, Seth.
And
stylist, Rashi Bindra.
It's time to get started.
Let's talk fashion, shall we? Ara is a fashion photographer based in Toronto, Canada. She enjoys telling stories through the lens of fashion and is often fascinated with how people dress. Ara strives to reflect her experiences, interests, and aspirations through her work and hopes that in turn, her viewers can relate with their own point of view.
Photography is a second career from a rediscovered passion for life. Prior to picking up a camera, Ara worked in tech and e-commerce. She has led teams including creatives such as writers, photographers, designers, and editors, as well as business professionals such as project managers, sales and operations, and believes this makes her a better photographer as she tries to understand how the worlds of art and commerce connect.
So with that, Ara, welcome to Elevated Grapes. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. So let's just start again. So with that, Ara, welcome to Elevated Grapes.
Thank you so much for having me.
No.
Was I not supposed to respond? Let's try it again.
Let's do it again.
Okay, I won't say anything.
No, respond, because I just didn't, because last time I wasn't sure you guys heard me, so it's fine. I'd rather you respond. It's better anyway.
Okay.
So with that, Ara, welcome to Elevated Grapes.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to jump right into our first question. So you say photography is almost a second career from a rediscovered passion for life. How did this come about?
Well, I actually discovered photography when I was on maternity leave. So I had a career in tech and e-commerce, and I just started taking pictures of my son. My husband had bought me this beautiful camera that always just sat in the bookshelf used at Christmas. So I finally found a reason to use it. I got off auto and figure out how to manually set things, and I instantly fell in love. And I've always been creative, but I come from an immigrant family, and art was never something I was allowed to pursue growing up. So my parents had always said, like, we came to Canada, you're going to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, and business was the fallback if you couldn't do any of those. So this is what I'm passionate about, and I didn't discover it until I had a child and I was in my 30s. But it's like, how you always say, like, hey, I don't want to do the 9 to 5. The 9 to 5 doesn't even matter anymore. So it's a different feeling altogether.
Rashi, do you want to touch on the concept of battling through the immigrant family and trying to choose a passion? Because I think that's close to your heart.
Yeah, and I think, Ara, like you've touched on something that's so important, and a lot of us now, especially a lot of women, especially a lot of, immigrant like women, we're just like, fuck this, we're done. Like, we don't want this 9 to 5. We don't want this, doctor, lawyer, engineer title anymore. Like, there's nothing wrong with being creative, and there's something really beautiful about living a life where you can thrive as an artist, and see and create beauty in the world. And the fact that you're able to do it in your 30s after you've had a child, it says so much about you, because we all know it's not very easy balancing work, life, home, being a mom, and trying to make all that happen. And you've come such a long way. I mean, like, most photographers who start, they still take so much time trying to find their style and their vibe and take on projects, but people already know you. So how does that feel?
Rashi, I think you think way too highly of me.
I don't.
I am
I'm just being
still,
honest.
I'm still learning. I have so much left to learn. I I don't think I found my style, but people tell me I have a style, so I
You
guess I
have a
must have one.
style. You do have a style. Yeah.
Maybe. Um, but I have so much to learn. I don't feel like I've accomplished anything major, you know. I'm not like there's so many women who have it so much harder. I'm not a single mom. I'm not like, you know. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that. I think that the misperception in my coming from an Indian background is that you know that idea of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like once
Hmm.
your basic, then you can explore art. And all of our parents immigrate give us that better life so that you didn't have to struggle for basic needs. And they gave us that so that we're the products of that. We're the children who can explore art. So they might not quite understand that, but that is what they've strived for. And they're actually, this is a sign of the evolution of our communities that, you know, brown kids can go and explore art. I think that that's a really great thing. So I think I'm just riding the wave of every other immigrant kid. I don't think there's anything special about what I'm doing.
No, I'll disagree only because I love how, you know, you are being creative, you are owning the brownness, which sometimes a lot of people don't do to try and fit in this mainstream culture and to try and, make it. They sometimes hide away from who they really are. And, especially since you and I have started working together and getting to know each other, you don't do that. You actually do the opposite. And you love, first of all, you love bringing women together. So most of the projects are always more like women oriented, and we'll touch on that. And then there's also this element of bringing the brown community together and pushing us, to be our best at our creative, needs, which we'll also get into in a few minutes with the photo shoot that I'm going to bring up in a bit.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think I purposefully, I'm trying to do it more purposefully now that I'm realizing that there aren't that many Indian models or Indian representation in like there's brown kids doing it, trying, but we're all very low on the chain. Like you don't see a lot of there's a few super successful people, not that many. It's I think it's the same battle that the black community is facing. So it's something similar where we're definitely we should definitely embrace our culture more because when I grew up, we shied away from it. You wanted to be cool, you wanted to be Canadian, and now we're embracing it, which is amazing. And I, yeah, I definitely am trying to be more thoughtful about it. But bringing people together is just it wasn't something that I thought of. It just kind of happened.
I'm going to ask a question to both of you because I think it's relevant to both of you, just with regards to being a creative in the industry, or so being a creative growing up in an immigrant household or immigrant family. Do you think at this day and age, I mean, not barring what it was in the past, but this day and age, is it more of a status issue, or do you think it's more of a parents that understand that you can actually make a living doing something creative?
When you say this day and age, do you mean people who are growing up now because
Or,
who
yeah, I
don't
mean,
know?
yeah, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if you're 18, 15, 30, whatever age you are, you're trying to
Yeah.
pursue this, because at the end of the day, parents are going to still be parents. If you're 30 or 35 or even 40, parents are still going to be like, well, that's not a good idea. They're going to still be your parents. So
Yeah.
pursuing a creative with that sort of mentality, do you think it's more of a a status thing? Well, my child's a doctor or a lawyer or whatever the case, or do you think it's more of a, well, we don't know that world, so we don't think you can make a living doing that?
I think everyone thinks you can't make a living doing that. I don't think that really, I mean, there are less people in white majority families who would not let their kids just explore for exploring, but I think
Hmm.
every parent still fears that. Like, oh gosh, what am I gonna
Yeah.
do? I'll talk to coworkers who will, at my last job and who would say like, oh, I'm worried. Like, do I have to leave, a fund for my children because
Yeah.
they want to be an artist? So I think that that's a normal worry,
Fair enough.
regardless.
um, yeah, but I like yes and no. I think from my perspective and the people or the communities, like, yes, the communities that I've known growing up and even now, a part of it is a status thing because that's just how our families were raised and that's what they knew. And as they became parents, part of it is a status thing that like, oh, like my daughter does not have a paycheck, coming in every 2 weeks type of thing. Which like does she have to marry rich to like support her
She does,
her
regardless.
of
Didn't you
course.
know?
But like that but, I mean yeah, but like marrying rich is awesome. Like I highly feel like we should all do it.
Isn't that
But
isn't that the basic expectation in every household?
yeah, but in this point, the expectation is she's not independent because she's an artist or he's an artist, so they're not really independent. How are they going to survive, type of thing. Whereas, and what will we tell our friends whose kids married three doctors, or like like all of those things. So there is a status um element to it.
Mhm.
I do see a lot of us now breaking away from it and disagreeing from it and being a little bit more free spirited if you are an artist or a creative, because you just want to like live life finally. Is it easy? Not always, especially as you get older and you have all and you come from an environment where these expectations are. It's a bit more challenging. But yes, Ara, like to your point, as a parent, you will worry. It's very normal.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I mean, the struggles, the good thing is I went to business school because I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. But that did help me figure out how to establish a business in my art field, which Rashi, you've seen. I'm like a crazy person when it comes to organization, planning, thinking the business way, the purpose of what we're doing. So I think that that has helped me. And I think that a lot of artists get told, like, go to business school, or photographers get told, go to art school, learn about the art, not about the technical photography, because you can figure that out. So those are kind of the two avenues, or both, if you can afford to and are lucky enough to just continue and do both in school. For me, the big struggle has been, like you'd actually mentioned earlier, being a woman, exploring sexuality through imagery. Like, I come from a very strict Muslim family, so just those are adventures and paths and ways of finding myself and trying to understand and navigate what I was raised to believe and what I believe. And those are kind of the struggles I'm having. As and if my parents still don't understand what I'm doing, I think sometimes it still happens to be like, as a woman. So I think that there's a lot of things that come into play, but I don't discount, it's definitely harder being an immigrant, being a colored person, coming from a lower income family, whatever those things are. I seem to be like the winner of all of those things, so lucky me.
So, folks, we're going to take a quick second to take a break right there. We're chatting with Ara Coutts, photographer, and we've been chatting about some of the challenges she faces from a cultural and gender standpoint, pursuing her passion as a photographer. So we'll come back and we'll explore that a little bit further. This is Elevated Grapes on Ruckus Avenue Radio and dashradio.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Stylist Rashi Bindra. Do not forget to follow us on Instagram as Elevated Grapes and show some love.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Elevated Grapes. I'm extremely excited about our guest today because she also happens to be one of my dearest friends. We are chatting with photographer Ara Coutts. She's a fashion photographer, beauty, lifestyle, and a lot more. So, Ara, as we were chatting, you were talking about, the whole idea of sexuality in your work. And and in full transparency, some of the photo shoots that you and I would like discuss and go back and forth, and even some of your work, there is always an element of sex to it. Very classy, very beautiful, very raw, but there's something about that attracts you, and you try to like bring it out. What like what is it about that you really want to capture in your stories? Because not a lot of photographers can do that. Not a lot of women photographers can do that and make their subjects feel beautiful and comfortable. So,
Well, thank you. That's a really big compliment. I I didn't realize I was doing it. I was actually asked by somebody else recently on a call, and they said, why do you do this? And why do you sexualize women? And I'm just like, what do you mean? like
see
in
your last
everything,
like photo
you're a little,
shoot?
yeah, you're a little obsessed with it, a little obsessed with the nudity. And I was like, oh my God, I am. I think a couple of things. So just more about my background. I went to an all-girls Islamic school for high school. I used to wear the full abaya. I came from like a very repressed understanding of sexuality and love and what those things mean and could mean. And so for me, my art is a way to explore that and the breaking of that. I think my art is evolving. I think there's somewhere I want it to go, but I'm not quite there yet. But first, it's understanding. I've been trying to spend a lot of time understanding what people think is beautiful and sexual. And in a lot of my work, you'll see it's like a mix of a female eye and a male eye. And I think I'm heavily influenced by a lot of male photographers out there. And when I say male photographers, I'm talking about the classy ones, but
Yep.
there's the beautiful way to see it. And I'm really attracted to like classic black and white photos, Peter Lindbergh's work, Chris Cole's work, Henrik's work, just, even like Polaroids, the old Polaroids that they would make of the shapes of the body and sexuality. So, but all of that has been for so long seen through a male's eye. And when I study it, I'm also like almost trying to mimic that, but then I have a different way of looking at it. So I've struggled. I've created things that I think are beautiful, and then I'll show it to my male friends, and they'll be like, yeah, that's not sexy. So I don't think I've found it yet, but I'm very interested because it wasn't something I was allowed to explore before, or something that I had to be like, oh, well, if you're showing your body, you don't respect yourself as a woman. And I've come full circle there. And, I think it's respectful and beautiful now. And I'm still trying to navigate it. I'm nowhere like ready to be walking on nude beaches myself, but, hopefully one day that's the goal.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I think from a male's perspective, there's a difference between artistic sexy and then sexy or raunchy sexy or whatever way you want to consider it. Like, and I think your work is sort of speaking to the artistic side of it, because you still have an artistic eye when you're taking these photos and the imaging you're trying to create with it. And I think that's what's important to recognize, that you're not doing it from the standpoint of trying to expose and or sexualize something in a negative or connotation, or in a way that's going to bring negative light towards it. I think you're doing it from an artistic standpoint. I think if someone's looking at a photo like that, you should be able to see that difference in what that's trying to depict.
Definitely. I think I have a bit of that. I've been watching like the photographers who do artistic sexy, so I'm definitely drawn to that. I think where I want my work to go, and I may be jinxing myself by putting this out in the world before I'm ready, but
put it out. It's important.
I want it to feel raw. I want it to feel like somebody else can relate back to it. And it's more than a perfect looking model.
Right.
Was sexy, but that I think that takes me from almost a fashion photographer to a portrait photographer, and really being able to connect. So that's where I hope to get to. And I won't be there when this airs, but maybe if you listen to this like a year back, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah. It will. I obviously am a bit biased when I say this, but I think even Sauter knows, like, if I see potential in someone, I know they're gonna make it. Like, I know they're gonna succeed. I mean, the rest is up to them, obviously, but like I know like that is gonna happen. One of those validations is the photo shoot that we recently did a sneak peek of. And even though you guys will be hearing this a little bit later when the full story is out, the reason I'm going to bring this photo shoot up is, I remember when we started planning it, before anything came, you're like, there's this model, we need to shoot her because she's going to become big and she has this face and I know her. And she's been in New York. And by the way, she's walking in New York Fashion Week, like right now, or like earlier today, guys. So just saying, Ara had the eye of this very specific model. So we did our entire shoot pretty much around her. Every other element, and when I say every other element, I'm talking chickens, roosters, horses, fences, all of that came after, but we did it around this model. And that's what I want to talk to you about a bit more is, do you feel like every time I've spoken to you, our shoots have gone around a model versus a lot of other photographers are like, this is a concept that I want to do. This is something I want to shoot. And in your case, and I know it's not only with me, but I know that in your case, it's like, there's this model. I love this face. I want to, I want to shoot her. This is how I'm thinking. And then you start that process there. What are
That's
your
also
thoughts
a new
about that?
insight to me. So I think you're right. I'm starting to realize it now that you say it. I'm like, wow, that's true. I am inspired by people. When I started photography, I found shooting landscapes really boring. Shooting birds really boring. Not that I can't appreciate a really cool epic shot of like, you know, a beautiful landscape or animals or anything like that on National Geographic. I'm just not, I didn't find that interesting and connecting.
You're not inspired by it.
No, yeah. But I find people, humans connecting. Like even on Instagram, you know, when Instagram used to not be about selfies, but about what you're doing, and people would take pictures of their food and their location and whatever. And it was rarely like a picture of them. I was always looking for the pictures of them, and I'd be like, why wouldn't you put yourself in front of this landscape? And, you know, so I want to connect with people, and I get inspired by the models and the stories that I want to tell through people. Now, it's a little bit different from portrait photography. So if you guys have ever heard of Humans of New York, I love Humans of New York. And he tells these stories, and he like, I just cry after every post and like have to figure out what this person's background is. I want to tell that through my characters. What I love about fashion photography, and the reason I'm not going to the streets and shooting actual people, is I like to create dreams, if that makes sense. So it's like, I don't know, you're the girl you've always dreamt about that you wish was a real person, and I want to bring that person to life. And, or, you know, that relatable kind of rough girl who lives on the street or whatever. It's so when I see a model and they kind of inspire that feeling in me, that's the story I want to tell. Ideally, if I had more talent, I might be a filmmaker, but you know, we'll see. So yeah,
Who
I'm
knows?
definitely
Never say
inspired.
never.
Yeah, never say never.
So let's sort of touch on that. You talk about dreams, and you talk about like sort of, you know, showing dreams and building dreams. Now, obviously, being a photographer was a passion of yours, is something that you sort of built into, like almost like a dream that came true for you. We want to understand, outside of some of the things you mentioned earlier, what are some of the challenges you faced entering that world, and also you may still face today?
Oh my God, so many. The first, I think, is trying to build your book, trying to get the right models. The right models can change a photo shoot. The right clothes or designers could change a photo shoot. And
the right stylist.
Sorry?
The right stylist.
The right, the right style. Yes, the right. Well, I mean, when I first started, I didn't even have a stylist, right? Like trying to get a team of people, it was such a challenge. You have to first build your book, then sell your book, then build your book again, and over as you grow. So making those connections and meeting people, and everybody, including myself, you know, we're impatient nowadays, and we just feel like we have to get to that end point. And I've been doing this for 6 months to a year. Why haven't I achieved it? And I found that the best way for me is to just set my next goal, not my total goal. So I always think like in broad terms. I told Rashi, I'm like, I have a beautiful big vision. You know, if I could shoot for Chanel one day, that would be my dream. But I also have a dream for this year, which is to get into this magazine or to work with this hair and makeup artist or whatever. So those are more achievable goals that I can work towards and build. You know, here's the list of my top 5 artists, and how am I reaching out to them, and what do these top makeup artists shoot with? What do the photographers' work look like? Let me get my look up there. And those are things that I can actually work on and achieve. And I feel like that's helped me stay focused, but hasn't been easy. It still isn't easy. There's no reliable paycheck or income to figure that out. And then the second one, I know I'm kind of rambling, but is to know my
No,
worth.
this is good.
Working for free is important, but I didn't understand what that meant. So like a lot of people, when I first started, I'd be like, oh, you're a small designer, I'm a new photographer, let's shoot this campaign for free. And I didn't quite understand working for free should be about exploring your creativity, your ideas, your visions. So now, and I was talking to Rashi, I'm like, if I still work for free, and I will for the rest of my life, I think most artists do. But when I'm working for free, it's because I have this vision that I want to bring to life, and I want to control every aspect of it. So I'm going to borrow clothes, I will give you photos, but I don't want your input. When it's your campaign, then I'm not working for free. If you're a small designer, cough up $1,000, $5,000, whatever. Like if you care about your brand, depending on where you are as a photographer, but
Right.
I would recommend even from day one, when you're doing a headshot for a friend, unless it's like, I don't know, a creative headshot that you want to do, and I don't know, you want to do some crazy makeup and who cares if they like it or not, that's what you do for free. But they should, if they want a LinkedIn profile headshot, they should pay you for that one. It's just respect, right? And it's
Right.
understanding your own worth. So I think that was probably the second biggest challenge in learning.
So we're chatting with
I think
photographer.
sorry, okay, go
Oh,
on.
sorry. We got to take a quick break. I
No.
apologize. We're going to come back to your thought, Rashi.
Yeah.
Chatting photographer Ara Coutts, and we'll be right back after this quick break. Hey guys, it's your host Sethi. We're also on TikTok, so make sure you follow us there at Elevated Grapes. Cheers, and back to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're having an interesting, very insightful conversation with fashion photographer Ara Coutts, and whoever you are, if you're listening and you want to do something great with your life, I would suggest that you hit repeat on this conversation and go back a few times and really pick up on the lessons that we're all learning from here. Ara, right before the break, we were chatting about knowing your value and knowing your worth and knowing when to work for free and what does that entail. And one of the things you mentioned was, if it's a basic exchange of services like someone asking for a headshot, cough up the money and pay the photographer. But if it's something about exploring a concept or an idea, and everybody who's involved knows it's a collaborative process and it's going to enhance your portfolio and your book, that's kind of okay. But my question to you now on that is, even within that, how do you keep boundaries? Because we both know sometimes, we get, especially as artists, you can get very excited about an idea, a concept, start building that, get a lot of team members involved, but not everybody kind of, lives up to what they're supposed to do. And there's always a cost or an expense that when you're doing a creative photo shoot or a creative video shoot, right? I feel the photographer bears most of it. So do you want to explore a little bit about that, like that part of the conversation?
Yeah, I think I'm selfish because I cover the cost of my photo shoots so I can have total control of what the heck we're shooting. I think that it's okay to collaborate between creatives. I dream of living in New York in the 70s when artists just used to stay there and smoke LSD all day and like create. Like that would be amazing, and just you with your friends just making stuff all day. That would be so good. So that's kind of the feeling that's what I crave, and that's what I try to bring in to my creatives. It really is to unlock something in my brain that I'm trying to get to. I think I approach creative projects differently than other artists. Some artists will say, we just come together and, makeup does whatever creative thing they want to do, styling does whatever, and then I shoot it however I want to, and we come up with something. I think I'm more OCD than that, so I struggle with that. But for me, when I do a creative, I think there has to be a leader for something to be successful. And so the leader is the person who takes the financial responsibility for that creative, or a majority of the financial. Like everyone pitches in, it's not It's not a corporate job, but that person, when I'm covering a lot of the costs for my photo shoots, I'm usually the one who approaches the team with the vision. Hey, this is what I want to create. Does this interest you? And if it does, let's create together. If it doesn't, cool, no hard feelings. But then I'm very set in like, this is the makeup idea I want. This is the styling I want. And if you're doing it for free, you should be excited about it too. Otherwise, please don't join my team. We won't have a lot of fun because I treat it like a job. And it is quite stressful to get to that process where we break through. But, you know, I've had makeup artists approach me and say, hey, for my book, I really need XYZ. So great, let's put it together, reach out to agencies, you know, but then don't expect the photographer to do all the reaching out, the setting up, because it's your shoot. I'm going to be there to shoot your vision for you. I'm excited about it, but I want you to take charge of it. So, you know, it's not always the photographer. It is most of the time for some reason, but it doesn't always have to be.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think that the onus lies on the photographer in that scenario?
What do you mean?
Well, you said it's not always the photographer. I mean, it's usually the photographer, right? So why do you think that happens? Like, why do you think the onus goes back and lies on the photographer?
It seems to be the photographers are bringing the ideas, or maybe. I don't know how it works on other teams, but if I have a stylist bring the idea to me, then I expect that. Maybe that's why we don't shoot a lot of it, because they'll just go find another photographer. I don't know. But I also think it's respectful to my team. Like when we do a project, usually the photographer gets paid the most too. So we're all struggling to create the book, but I don't work with a lot of teams. Like I don't work with just anybody. It's very tight. I don't work with one person. I work with a few, so that if someone is sick or someone has a different style, I can still present things to my clients. But when I get a job, they hire my team. They don't just hire me.
So let's talk about that, the concept of teamwork. What makes a good team in your opinion? What are your thoughts on the relationships between, say, for example, like a stylist, obviously, and the photographer, or like a creative director?
I think it sounds weird, but like there's an energy thing. There's like you either vibe or you don't. I think I was telling Rashi this when she reached out and said, hey, let's work together. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a model test first because I want to know if I like you or you're a crazy person.
And we both are crazy. So
I was gonna say it's probably both. You probably like her, but she's also a crazy person.
Yeah. So energy is huge. Work ethic is really big for me. A creative person who takes a creative shoot seriously is somebody that I would bring on to a job. Some people don't understand that, especially when they're young. They're like, oh, it's a creative, who cares? It's not a paid job. But like, that's where you're setting the stage of who you are and what your work ethic is. So I think that, and of course, talent, independence, and vision. The third is vision. Our visions have to align. So you could be really talented, but have like a completely different style. And when I was still learning, and sometimes I'll do this, I'll work with a stylist that's like totally off and, you know, hope that magic happens. And sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't, because what we aesthetically think is like appealing is not the same. And then it creates more chaos and not a positive chaos. Like I think that positive chaos could be better if it's a smaller group, like just two people working together, where you clash and something magical happens. And that usually happens with Rashi and I before the shoot actually happens, so no one sees it. But when you're on set with like 10 different people, you can't be clashing. You have to really vibe and go with the flow. So
that's very true. That's very true. And it's interesting that you said that, because especially with, yes, first we almost broke up, but we didn't, guys. We both just stepped away from a very heated conversation, because again, we both are Leos and we both are very controlling in a lot of ways, and we both have this big grand vision of things that we want to do and create. So yes, we almost broke up, but we didn't. But what I was going to say was, when, you know, like as you're talking about the whole clashing and chaos and having that vision, when I approached you and we decided to do a model test after quite a bit of back and forth, you asked me who was my dream client. And I said Gucci. And you're like, I'm not the right photographer for you. My dream client is Saint Laurent. And I'm like, okay, we'll still do the shoot together. And I mean,
So hold on, was your
later.
big fight over Gucci and Saint Laurent? Like, was that where the big fight?
No, we're not
Oh.
that petty.
I mean, like Gucci is still my dream client, but I can still style Saint Laurent. I think like we've had those conversations. So now I'm gonna ask you this: do you feel that sometimes you also need a stylist who's gonna push you out of the box a little bit, because you may sometimes need that as a photographer?
I want someone that sees things that I don't see. Because if they saw everything that I saw, then what would be the point? I can go pull clothes. I did it before. I used to email the designers myself. So it's one set of eyes to look at clothes and if they're sitting correctly, but also to pair things that I might not see. I mean, Rashi, one of the things that you say is like, trust me. And I'm like, yeah, have a backup because I don't trust you. And then when you put it on, I'm like, okay, you were right. But
that's my favorite sentence from your mouth every time.
I still need that. Actually, maybe our fight was about Gucci and Saint Laurent because everything Rashi brought together, I was like, yuck, we can't put this together. And she's like, it's good. And I was like, no, it's awful. But it made us go through a lot of iterations. I came, some of the stuff she still brought that I said, absolutely not. And then I was like, oh, wow, that looks good. Thanks for not listening to me. But we still came like to a shot list that by negotiation back and forth, we met in the middle, and I'm really proud of the looks and the story and the thought. I just like to be a lot more involved than other people. I don't just say, hey, pull clothes, I'll see you on Thursday. And like, what are you pulling? What's the top? What's the bottom? How's this going to go together? And, you know, I'm very opinionated, but yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's passionate. You're passionate about your product and what you're putting out there. So you want to make sure that it represents what you're doing. So I think that's a good quality to have, especially when you're putting out creative work. I think it's also important, and I think you guys touched on it a little bit, is to work with people who have a difference of opinion, who can bring something different to your vision that you may not see, or vice versa, to add value to it, or to bring something that's going to be a little bit, you know, off the cuff a little bit from what you're concerned. Because when you finish with a product that you may have not seen, like Ara on your side or Rashi on your side, and you're like, oh crap, like that really worked out from my perspective. I would have never A, thought of it, or B, considered it. It's not something that my mind would take me to. So I think that importance, but ironing it beforehand when you're not on set and trying to get the shots done and sort of in the heat of the moment, it's obviously at that point you guys got to be on point. And I'm not just speaking to you two in specific. I'm saying in general when you're working with a team. But I think having that hash out prior to and battling it through, because sometimes that's important, and because that way you also hear your partners and your team's perspectives, which sometimes it takes a little bit of a heated conversations to get that through sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's just like running a business. Like if you were an executive team, you would hash it out, you would figure out the strategy, and then to the rest of the team you would come together as one with one view on what the strategy is and what you're going to do. So I think that's right. That's kind of the secret, is hash it out before and then have great synergy, because you can have a few things, but if it's chaos on set, your team will get confused or demotivated, and that's absolutely not helpful, right?
Absolutely.
And I think what makes a good team or a good relationship between your team members is you can have those difficult conversations, right? You can say, this is not what I have in mind, or this is not what, like, I'm not sure if it's going to work, and go and do it and have the back and forth, but not take it too hard, not take it personally, and then end up producing great work after, right? So I think that's really key there as well.
Absolutely. So folks, we're going to take a quick break right there. We're chatting with photographer Ara Coutts, and we'll be right back after this break on Elevated Grapes.
Hey everyone, this is Stylist Rashi Bindra. Do not forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, all your streaming sites, YouTube. We are also on Facebook. Just type in Elevated Grapes and you can find us.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Elevated Grapes with fashion photographer Ara Coutts, who happens to be slightly controlling in her photo shoots, but it also means that she's a leader and she knows what she wants. If you plan to work with her on her team, like just get ready. Just get ready to get very, very detailed about what's going to happen. And I say that with a lot of love because I know that's how she brings out the best in her team. So, Ara, now talking about people working with you, have you assisted other photographers, and what are your thoughts on photo assistants?
I haven't had the fortune to assist other photographers. I definitely should have done that. That is a big regret. I did take this on when I was much later, so this is kind of a second career for me. And there was just no way. I worked full time. There was, as I was discovering photography, like there's just no way that I can assist. So unfortunately, I had to make a lot of the mistakes and learn from my mistakes, but I did try to get around that. I really focused on education. I took a lot of classes online on Creative Live. I started there. I did some YouTube stuff, bought masterclass, watched the heck out of that. And then I reached out to photographers that I do admire internationally, who I wished were my teachers, and I meet with them monthly, and I have coaching sessions and homework assignments, and so I'm learning through that. I wish I could be on set with them and like really see how they work, but it is what it is. So I recommend if you're out of school and you have the ability to do that, like do it. There's no other time to do it. I definitely assisted and shadowed people in my business career, so I know that that helped me a lot. So I think that that's great.
I think you mentioned something really
And
important there. Sorry, Rashid, just I want to make a
mm,
really quick point there. I
mm,
think you mentioned something really important about the process of learning and growing. A lot of people, when they get into something creative, the race is to get and go in and create something, not taking the time necessarily to learn along the way. I'm not saying you can't create while you're doing it, but learning, having those monthly meetings with, reaching out to other photographers that inspire you, and having monthly meetings with them, and like you said, really important, like doing homework based on tasks they provide you with, I think is amazing, from a learning experience and just growth, because you're going to provide, them with stuff that they're asking you for. They have an eye for it already, and they can tell you, well, here's what you could do different, here's how you could better this, and so on and so forth. I think that alone, regardless of being having the ability to assist or going through the process of assisting other photographers, almost accomplishes a similar sort of goal, right? So I
Mhm.
think that's a really important lesson for a lot of people, is that spend that time with pros in the industry that you're pursuing, or the creative that you're pursuing, and reach out to people. And then, you'd be surprised, I think, how much more people are actually willing to be a part of your process if they see the genuine care, and like you said, the work ethic and that sort of thing from the get-go.
Yeah, for 100%. I agree. I think that if you can assist and have good work ethic, like you said, when you do assist, you're going to get a lot out of it. I try to give back the same way that I'm getting back. So for my assistants, I always let them either warm up the model or have 15 minutes with the model at the end of the photo shoot. So they get to shoot models that they probably can't pull yet. And I couldn't when I started. So that's a nice way to build their book,
Yes, that's
even if
incredible.
it's a very simple shoot shot. I don't have a studio anymore, but when I did before COVID, I would allow my assistants to have one day in the studio to do whatever they wanted. So just trying to give back, and if you assist the right photographers who care for the people that work for them, just like any other company you would work
Hmm.
for, you want someone that cares. I think that you can get not just experience watching them work, but just learning, picking their brain, um, maybe even using their stuff. Like I think there's lots of value you can get out of that.
yeah, no, that's actually very, very true. And I think that kind of applies to all roles within the creative industry. I think everyone that we've spoken to have always said that assisting is key. And I think, our like to your point, like I've seen you work with your assistants as well, and you do give a lot, and you help them get to the next level, and that's like for them that is the biggest opportunity right now in their starting out of their career, right? Um, How do you balance your family life with everything that you're doing?
I
Oh,
don't.
we
I've been
saw the eye roll.
gaining.
We saw the eye roll.
I've been gaining so much weight. I don't think there's a thing called balance. Like, I know we live in this society where everyone's like, oh, you're going to balance everything. But I think if you look back on the history of anyone who's done anything, they've lost something, because you can't do everything. You just have to choose what you're going to prioritize and what you're going to lose. Anyone who tells you you can do it all is lying, or like so filthy rich that they have assistants and nannies that do everything for them. I'm just saying, like, there's just no actual human way to do it. So I used to be a person who like worked out 3 times a day. I don't do that anymore, unfortunately, but that's okay. I can bring that back sometime later. I'm really focused on growing this right now, just like
Yeah.
any other entrepreneur, you know?
Yeah, and I think the term balance is overrated. Like, seriously, what is balance? Like, what
Work,
is
burnout,
balance?
sleep, and
Right?
then like
Like,
do it
what
again.
is
Work,
balance?
burnout, sleep, repeat.
Yeah. It's the worst advice ever. No one should be
Yeah, it's
listening to
that's like
me on
that's
a
like the quote of the show.
That will go like flashing. Like
Yeah, yeah,
our trailer will be work, burnout, repeat.
yeah. That's
That's
what I'm putting it.
balance.
The title of the show is work, burnout, repeat.
Yeah, no, like I had to ask that question because I hate when people tell me how will, but if you're doing like this and if this is your lifestyle, how will you balance? Well, fuck balance. Like, what is it? First of all, it's a, human made concept. Um, but I was curious to know your thoughts on balance, or actually let the world know your thoughts on balance.
I think the important part in I think where balance is concerned is giving yourself some time for you. Like it's not it doesn't necessarily mean like you got to go work out or whatever the case, but some whatever it is that you enjoy outside of that. Because also creativity comes from different inspirations, different places, and sometimes I find on the creative side when I'm not working on my creative, that's when some of my best thoughts come to me. Whether you're just doing something with the family or you're like maybe you're making a dinner you haven't made for whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Like just anything that's going to give you something to walk away from just everyday life and give you that time. And sometimes those are the aha moments when you click something like, oh, this is amazing. Like maybe I should try this, and you go back to your studio or whatever and work on that. So I think balance I think is different to different people. I think you have to define what balance is to you. And I think having some personal time for yourself is always important because I think it helps you to recharge your creativity.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean by burnout and sleep. Like
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
an everyday thing. It's not like you burn out by the end of the day, you sleep and you wake up, you're good to
Yeah,
go. Like
yeah.
that like when you're burned out and you can't even work, like you can't even pick up a
Can't
camera, and
function.
then
Yeah.
like I don't know if everyone does this, but I have like days where I'm gonna sound so bad, but I'll watch The Bachelor and watch the entire season, and that's like the most mind-numbing show ever. But like my brain
Absolutely.
just cannot think or move, or I can't even make coffee for sometimes.
Yeah.
So I just have to go through that and then spend time with my family. And I'll call Rashi and say, I'm not shooting this month. I'm sorry. Like unless it's a big client job that shows up and doing nothing. And you're right, you need that. So definitely need that time away, because if you work all the time, you'll find you're not creative anymore. You're just working.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about what's next for you. What can people expect from you, and what kind of projects are you working on going forward?
I did a photo shoot with a model that I really loved, and I went back to the basics. I went with just the stylist. We pulled like $10 clothes from the store and we shot it with the
I love
model,
it.
no hair and makeup, nothing. And it was beautiful. And I want to go back more into that, because I've always been hitting a wall about why can't I take my work to the next level? But
Mhm.
I've been focused and doing things the same way. You know, that idea of like, if you do the same things, it's like definition of insanity kind of.
Yes.
Um, so I'm trying to do it differently. I'm trying to pull back the layers and take my skill to the next level before I bring the team back together on another big project. So you're going to see a lot more little projects from me from a while, until the next big one. And I'm also doing workshops because I would like to give back. So I'm doing workshops on a platform called Daisy. I'm doing one on September 20th and October 19th. One's going to be about how to build a lookbook for a fashion designer. And then the other one's going to be about how to build and plan an editorial shoot. So they're just online. They're nothing fancy. I'll probably suck because it's my first time ever giving a session, but I learned from hearing about other people's stories. So I want to be able to do that too.
Well, your advice and stories and experience that you shared today were quite incredible. So if this workshop is anything like that, I think it'll be fantastic for anybody who's aspiring to learn and grow.
Thanks, guys. Give me a plug. Give me like a shout out.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I hope to get one person to sign up. That's my goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will get people. You will get people. They'll go on your Instagram. They'll see all your work, and they're like, "Holy shit, we need to learn from her." So you'll like get people.
I'll be like, how do you turn on a camera again?
Yeah. With the on button. Where do people find you online? Where can they find you online? So if they want to actually sign up or learn more about your journey, where can they get you?
Ara Coutts at everything. So at Ara Coutts. It's pretty simple. I have a name that no one else has, so I have that pleasure.
You did mention one thing earlier about, planning your, so this is in the same light of, what's next for you. You mentioned one thing about planning sort of in blocks, like small steps and small projects, small goals. If you had to define, say, for example, a 5-year goal, and you mentioned it maybe a little bit earlier, but if you had to define, okay, in 5 years, this is what I want to do or what I want to be in this world, what would that be if, talking from today, and that may change, but talking from today?
I definitely want in 5 years to have some of the bigger clients in my market. I would love to say that I'm living in New York City or something like that, but I do, unfortunately, again, because I started this later in my life, I have children. I'm not sure if I'll be moving, so I do hope that I can be a big fish in a small pond, which is a really weird goal to have, and then eventually be recognized and working internationally. So I would say that's kind of the latter in the way that I want to.
Well, home base can always be here, and if once you build that level, then travel is always an option.
I know, it's just, I think people think that, I'm going to go work in New York or Milan and they're going to fly me. And I'm like, why are they going to fly you when there's photographers just as good as you living down the street where they don't have to pay for the travel? So unless you're a really well-known person or you're creating something so exceptional, that's not going to happen. And if you want that, then you better really focus on art.
Right.
This is a weird thing, but I was telling Rashi, I was like, I feel like robots are going to take over. And this is my weird robot analogy, but even in photography, like the lookbooks that we're shooting, the e-commerce stuff, like that can be done by a robot. It's not, but if I'm starting to create art, then that'll never go away. So my big goal, actually, there you go, is in 5 years, I'd like to have an art exhibition. I don't want to just be a fashion photographer. I want to be a real artist. So that's what I want.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And that's not created by AI, it's created by you.
Yes, exactly. Nothing that a computer, something, and to do that, you really have to touch people, right? And make images that say something. So that's where I'm trying to get to with my work.
Ara, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, your stories, your experiences, your lessons, coming from a person who sort of built it on their own without, being an assistant, and sort of reached out and built their network on their own. This is truly an inspiring story.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I am so honored. I've looked at your other guests and what the hell? Why did you call me? But I'll take it. Thank you.
So, folks, thank you for joining us again on Elevated Grapes. I am your host, Sethi, and
now is where I say him. Okay, and I'm Rashi Styles. Sometimes he says it, sometimes I say it. That's why, guys. Okay, this is Rashi Styles.
I like to surprise in the moment.
Yeah, clearly.
All right, folks. On that note, we will catch you next week on Elevated Grapes. Hey guys, thank you for watching that podcast or that video. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more of us and see some of our behind-the-scenes stuff, subscribe below.
Yes, hit that little red, button thingy that's over there and hit subscribe and keep following us for a lot more cool, fun stuff.
Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Hey, what's up, everyone? I am your host, Sethi.
I am stylist Rashi Bindra.
Elevated Grapes is a digital media hub that includes a talk show, event correspondence, and digital hosting for partner projects.
The talk show, which you are listening to or watching, depending what you're doing, covers topics in fashion, business, and lifestyle.
We regularly have incredible guests that share their stories, their experiences, and tips on the above topics.
And when we don't, you get to hear how we talk to each other off air.
So subscribe to your favorite streaming site, YouTube, and Instagram for behind the scenes and additional visual content.
Let's jump right into the show. Welcome to Elevated Grapes.